Good evening, listeners, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of
Fear the Queer, a podcast that talks about everything on our gay agendas. I'm Kyle.
And I'm Josh.
And on today's episode, we have a spooky guest, the queen of queer theater, the director of Lesbians, and my favorite Iowan, not you, Josh, it's Hannah Siglin.
Yay!
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
So before we get to the heart of our gay agenda, Josh, what are we drinking tonight?
We are drinking water.
Woo!
And you're drinking coffee.
I'm drinking coffee to stay hydrated and caffeinated. So cheers, queers.
Cheers. And a third clink to Hannah. But before we get into the heart of our gay agenda tonight, we are going to do another segment of
Catch That Queer, in which we talk about someone who's helped the LGBTQ plus community in the past, in the present, and the future.
Yes.
So Josh, who are you talking about today?
I don't know if you've ever heard of her, but her name is Mary Shelley.
Well, color me spooky, I have.
Okay, so everyone knows Mary Shelley is the author of Frankenstein, and Frankenstein's legacy has gone on, till this day of time. But a little bit of backstory of Mary Shelley is that she was born to two philosophers, Mary Wollstonecraft. I don't know if I'm saying her name correctly.
That's such a good literary name, though.
Wollstonecraft. And William Godwin. So her mother was a feminist. It was so funny, they credit her with the idea that women should be educated so that way they don't seem inferior to men. As if that was such a radical idea back then.
It kind of was, though.
I know. And then William Godwin is actually considered one of the first anarchists of London.
Why are they not my parents?
So they basically Mary died really quickly when Mary Shelley was born. And so her father had to raise her all by himself, yada, yada, yada. Mary Shelley then gets introduced to her father's friend, Peter Shelley, when she was 16.
Oh.
And Peter Shelley was 22 at the time.
Okay.
And they fell in love, and Mary Shelley's just like, hi, Dad, here's my new love. You already know him. Kind of like in Friends when Monica and Richard get together.
Oh, okay.
And her dad disowned her.
Ooh,
I know.
daddy issues.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. For someone who's very open-minded and things like that, he's
Yeah.
very much just like, Mary, that's gross.
It's like, that's not cute.
Yeah. So
That's my friend.
I know. So unfortunately, he disowned her. They eloped, and then one summer, and get this, I was reading some of Mary's history, and just how can people do this? Her husband, and their friend Lord Byron take an entire summer off, and they rent out a castle in Geneva.
I love it. That is goals.
I know. They're just we're all three starving artists, and we should just take some time off to write. So they rent out a castle. And legend has it is that one summer night, during a thunderstorm, Lord Byron turns to the other two, and they're just like, you know what? I want to challenge you guys. And they're like, what do you mean? And they're like, let's all write a ghost story. Mm-hmm. And whoever has the best ghost story wins, whatever competition they have.
Sure.
Yeah. And the two boys, were just like, oh, well, this is going to be easy for me. And Mary even admitted at the time that it was actually kind of hard for her to think of a ghost story. And she claimed that it actually came to her in a dream.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yes. And that dream just happened to be the concept of Frankenstein.
Oh.
Yes.
Well, piecing it together.
Mm-hmm. So, Frankenstein, obviously, its legacy is incredible in so many different ways. Tonight we're going to be talking about the queer legacy of Frankenstein. And a little bit of backstory of Mary Shelley is that she is actually also considered part of the queer community.
Go on.
Yes. So she has been quoted in her diaries, because she's been quoted to say she is a free lover and a advocate of free love at all times.
Yeah, and that's kind of queer ideology.
I feel like
that's
it's
queer canon.
Well, I feel like that's coded as queer as the best way possible back then.
Right, she's not I'm getting down and dirty with the ladies.
Right.
But she also is saying, I might not be doing that.
Right.
As close as you can get without being criminalized.
Right. Before
Right.
being hanged or anything like that. So
why did I laugh when you said being hanged? I'm like, oh no.
Yeah. So we'll go into a little bit of how Mary Shelley's advocacy of free love then ties into Frankenstein and some of the coding of that. But before we do that, we're also going to turn the tables to Miss Hannah. So
to get to the heart of our gay agenda, we invited our friend Hannah to come and talk today. So Hannah is a theater person, Don't be afraid.
Correct.
A director of theater.
Yes.
And has directed a show that I would like her to talk about because it fits in with our ooky spooky kooky creepiness and queerness and otherness, and it's always refreshing to get someone else's take besides Josh and my own.
Right, exactly.
So Hannah, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where'd you come from? Where did you go to school? Etc.
All right, so like Kyle said before, I am from Iowa, just like Josh.
I'm very happy about that.
I'm from a little town called Greenfield. It's about 45 minutes from Des Moines, if that means anything to you.
Oh, Des Moines, I've heard of her.
Exactly.
I feel like most people have only heard of Des Moines.
Yeah, Des Moines, Iowa City, that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
But very, very small town, about 2,000 people, but I was exposed to theater from a very young age. My mom directed all the shows at the high school as well as the community theater. So she likes to tell the story of how I was maybe like 5 or 6 years old going to a funny thing happened on the way to the Forum, those rehearsals, and like memorizing all the lines and correcting people.
As a true theater director.
Oh,
right?
yeah. Oh, yeah. So I really grew up with it. I acted throughout my childhood and high school, and then I was like, maybe directing is more my thing. So that's what I went to school for here in Chicago at Columbia. I got my degree there. I graduated in December, so here I am, doing my best. But while I was in school, I directed this show called Carmilla, and that's what I'm here to talk about today.
Oh.
I'm very
Ooh.
excited.
Yes. Okay, so explain a little bit of Carmilla to us, because I've never even heard of it before.
I haven't heard of it. Hannah mentioned it offhand, and I was like, you should come and talk about it, because I don't know a goddamn thing.
No.
So when I found Carmilla, I had literally Googled spooky plays because I really wanted to do like a horror or something like that. And this was my sophomore year of college.
Okay.
Or junior? Whatever. It was a while ago.
It's all relative.
Yeah.
When you're in the middle of it, you're like, okay, it's just all college.
It's so true.
Grades don't mean anything.
So this play is an adaptation of a novella that was written by an Irish man named Joseph Sheridan Le Fanu. It's one of the earliest known works of vampire fiction, published in 1872, which was 26 years before Dracula.
Oh.
So it's
Yes.
pre-Dracula.
Pre-Dracula.
Living.
And it's narrated by a young woman being preyed on by Carmilla, who is the vampire. But of course, homosexuality was a huge no-no, so that whole thing was portrayed as an antagonism. So Carmilla was the villain because she was gay.
Oh,
And, you know,
she's
killing
identified
people.
as a female vampire. Okay.
Yeah.
I got lost there. Okay.
Josh was so hung up, he's like, okay,
I
vampire.
was like, where does the queerness come in?
And that's it, yes. Carmilla was the vampire. And
Okay.
she was preying on this young woman. So the play that I did was written by David McDowell Blue. It was just released in 2014.
Oh, that's new.
But there's been a lot of adaptations of it. Like, I think there's been movies and more recently a web series called Carmilla.
Really?
It's
I kinda
very,
love
very
that.
cheesy.
Is it cheesy?
but,
Okay.
oh my god, I watched every episode.
You
That's
just
one
like
does.
gobble up the content.
Yeah. They even made a movie. It was wild.
Really? I've never heard of this. That's crazy.
Carmilla.
Carmilla. Like Carmilla Cabello?
That's
No,
not
that's
her
Carmilla.
name. That's, oh my god. No!
So, about the adaptation, like, how did you even go about finding it? And how did you even, like, start directing it and all that stuff?
So I found the adaptation just on Google, and I looked it up on Amazon. I read like the first half of it that they had available as a preview, and I was like, this is incredible. It's very cheesy and a little kitschy, but I can do this.
Yeah, cheesy and kitschy, we're all about that.
Yeah, but most importantly, I was like, it's queer, it's vampires, like this is perfect for Columbia. It's perfect for me and my directing journey right now.
Was that your first debut, like, as a director?
Pretty much.
Oh my
Before
gosh.
that, I had directed like a 20-minute play, which was
Okay.
also gay. Like, people started knowing me as the queer director, which I was fine with.
That's really cool.
But that's awesome.
Yeah.
The queen of queer theater.
Yes.
But yeah, so this adaptation is kind of a flashback structure, and it was placed in the 1930s and 40s, jumping back and forth pre-World War II and post-World War II.
Okay.
So, and it's based around this detective who goes to investigate Nazis, and our protagonist, her father and her father's friend were Nazis. So the detective is trying to kind of piece together their organization. And through these flashbacks, we start to see the relationship form between the protagonist and Carmilla, and how that affected her, because she was isolated for most of her life to get away from the war. Even though she was Aryan, she had nothing to worry about.
Sure.
But just her seclusion and getting to know this like mysterious other figure.
So in the adaptation that you directed, is it a positive reflection, like their relationship?
It is,
or
actually.
More so, I guess.
Yeah, they still have to kind of hide their relationship from everyone.
Of course.
Right.
Of course, but no, I never saw Carmilla as the villain because there is an actual Nazi in the play. So I was like, it was very clear like
who the villain was.
Yeah.
The Nazi is a villain. The vampire is actually the good the good person, yeah.
Honestly though, spoiler, the vampire kills the Nazi.
Oh, brilliant.
Major mood.
Yeah.
That's my political affiliation, is vampires killing Nazis.
Yeah, but that was part of it, like finding what made the play relevant. Like, it was a time when all this neo-Nazi stuff was coming about. So
Right.
like, this play is way too relevant. We wish it wasn't this relevant, but it is. So that was really interesting. As well as just their relationship is always relevant because telling queer stories.
Yeah.
I was going to say, queers,
whole thing.
like, prevailing against neo-Nazism.
Exactly.
That's a big mood.
Big
A queer woman prevailing
Yes.
against Nazis.
Yes.
Yeah, big mood.
And this otherness just, like, overtaking the evil.
Right.
Really.
It's
Yeah.
like, and would, I guess, like, because Nazis, I guess, would be like the norm. So it's like kind of like queerness overtaking the norm, overtaking this, like, straightness is evil.
Honestly.
Yeah.
Oh my god, Kyle's canceled. Kyle's canceled. No, I love at least like 5 straight people.
2 of them are your
There's a
parents.
handful.
Well, 2 are my parents. So when you were like a kid growing up in Iowa, did you ever think like, were you drawn to like spooky ooky horror type things, or just like imaginative? Because I feel like people who are in theater were always like imaginative kids.
Oh, yeah.
And you said that you were kind of directing from a young age, like.
Yeah, I was pretty much always involved throughout my life, but I wasn't really like a big spooky person growing up. It took me a long time to really get into like horror movies.
Yeah.
But my older sisters were pretty into it, so I would just be like, ooh, like inching myself in.
Right.
But we were always very imaginative, like playing pretend. We would play fairies outside with little clovers turned over, and like, they would be little fairies. Yeah, we were always making up games and playing dress up and like making up stories.
I love that. Yeah. I pretend to be a fairy now.
Yeah.
Actually, I am a fairy now. So sometimes the imagination takes over.
So I guess my question for you then is, obviously besides the fact that it's like a really cool story, what made you want to do Carmilla at that moment in time?
Honestly, it was just the idea of lesbian vampires. I was like, this is incredible. This is the exact story I need to be telling right now. Because I was very lucky to figure out early on that queer theater was like what I wanted to do. I figured that out like my freshman year, and I was like, oh, finally it clicked. So I was looking for that specifically. I was like, I want to do queer stories. Something spooky would be great because you don't see much spooky theater.
Right.
More now as we get into more like immersive theater, which is incredible because it's just in your face. But yeah, I wanted to do some kind of other storytelling with queerness.
Right.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And so I've never seen a play at Columbia. Like, is it just in the school itself that you have it on?
Yeah, it was a weird year because the theater building was under a lot of renovations and blah, blah, blah. So I had it in a...
So it's outside the bean. Like,
it was actually in one of the other buildings.
Okay.
So I had it set up in an alley configuration, which is just like a long acting space with the audience on either side of it.
oh.
Yeah, which was a challenge for staging.
Yeah. And that was a director choice, right?
Yes, that was my
cool.
choice. That was my choice.
Okay. What was the reception like to the play?
It was mostly positive from
Yeah.
what people told me.
Was it a big cast? Like, because you have like the
No.
Nazis, the vampire, and the girl.
Yeah, so I think there were 7 actors. 2 of them played 2 characters each.
Okay.
So 9 characters, but I had 7 actors.
Okay.
Yeah, but mostly I think people responded to seeing a queer story on stage. And
Yes.
I think that was pretty powerful.
Right.
Whether or not you liked the actual play, that whatever, it didn't matter as much to me because I really just wanted to put that story on stage.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes people just want to see something different and something they can connect to. And I feel like whether it's queer or just being othered, like even if it was just about a vampire who and her sexuality had nothing to do with it, just the otherness is attractive to people.
Absolutely.
Oh, for sure. Especially people who, like, grew up, like, especially, like, with us, like, growing up in small towns, being considered, like, others on a rather red, well, where we grew up is kind of red in terms of, like...
Political affiliation.
Like, political affiliation.
It was rather red.
Sorry, yeah. No, but just, like, being able to identify as, like, another growing up, even that alone. So...
Yeah, because I don't know about you, but when I was growing up, I never realized that I was queer, but I always knew that I was different.
Yeah.
So seeing anything like that in TV, movies, theater, whatever, was really comforting.
Yes. And then being a creative kid, isn't it interesting, like, when you do express your creativity in a small town like that, for whatever reason, the first thing is it's immediately rejected as being like, oh, you're so fucking weird. Like,
So my sisters and I were all pretty creative kids. My oldest sister is an artist now, and
That's so cool.
yeah, I don't know, people always just saw us differently. I don't know if it was because we acted strange or if we were a little more reserved. And, like, for a long time, we were not necessarily outcast, but we were, like, in a different little group. And one of my friends in high school told me that a lot of people thought that my sisters and I were all depressed, and I was like, that's strange to me.
Just because you're different doesn't always mean you're depressed.
Yeah, like
sorry, that's so weird.
I just don't know why, because we were always very friendly towards other people. We were really nice.
Right.
But because we were, like, a little different, I guess it just caught on.
That just,
I
like,
don't know.
I got the first thing they go to is, oh, mental defect. Like,
Right, like,
And sometimes it is, though.
Right,
I mean, like, sometimes it is, but not always.
Yeah,
Not always. Interesting.
Yeah, so I don't know. We were just kind of set apart, and not necessarily in a bad way. We were just different.
Right, right. And I think sometimes being different is... Oh my god, I sound like an after-school special. Being different is what makes us special.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just
Thank
needed
you.
to say something important.
Yeah.
Put that on a t-shirt.
Right. Well, it's also cool, too, how, like, a lot of other horror stories, like Frankenstein, also is considered, like, you can look at the queer undertones of it.
Well, and I think it has a lot
You know
of
what I mean?
different things that you can pull from it. So, like,
Right.
you know the story of Frankenstein.
Yes.
I think what I love first is that a woman wrote it.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
I think that women should be...
Tidbit. Oh, sorry. When the book was released, she actually was afraid to put her name on it, so she actually released it anonymously because she was afraid at the time to just, like, I can't have people thinking that a woman could write something this dark and macabre. Yeah.
Which I love. And so, like, I read Frankenstein in high school, and it was my favorite thing that we read, and we read a lot of good things, but that was my favorite thing that we read. And when we talk about queer undertones, I know that there's articles out there that say, like, oh, like, it could have, like, trans, like, connotations, because it's the monster, Frankenstein's monster, is or the creature, is in a body that they don't necessarily identify with. I don't know if Mary Shelley meant to do that, or
I don't know.
Because, I mean, like, back then, I don't know if we have the terminology or if they had the terminology for transgender. I know trans people were around. It's not like they just came out of the blue, but...
Right, but it mostly manifested as, like, cross-dressing, quote-unquote.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Susan Stryker, do you know her?
No.
Okay, she is a trans activist and a philosopher, and she actually wrote an essay in 95 talking about how the transgender body relates to Frankenstein. Because I actually have a quote for it. She actually wrote, "The transsexual body is an unnatural body. It is the product of medical science. It is a technological construction. It is flesh torn apart and sewn together again in a shape other than that of which it is born." So, like, yeah, it's just...
So this would be, like, I guess, because trans can be all different kinds of shapes and sizes and people...
This is in terms of the physical body.
A physical... medical procedure.
Right. Well, that's what...
no, you're like,
yes.
Right. And?
No. So it's just interesting how... Because I never thought of it that way growing up in terms of, like, Frankenstein's, I guess, maybe not gender identity, but just actual identity in itself doesn't match in its body.
Well, and I always took it as, like... And even more so as an adult, I kind of pull from it, is Frankenstein he created something that he himself couldn't be. So it's almost like creating, I don't want to say gay, but like I'm gonna say it. He created a gay ass monster. So but because he himself couldn't be gay. And I know that's like really pulling at straws, but I don't know. I kind of get that. Like, and then the monster doesn't know what to do with himself. He's, like, rejected from society. He tries to do good, but it doesn't work out for him.
Well, he even says, too, he's just, like, he demands to, like, have a partner because it's, like, I demand I have every right to be happy, too, in life, right? So it's just, like...
You ever see Young Frankenstein?
I'm honestly thinking about that right now. I was like, yeah, and in Young Frankenstein, it's like perception versus reality because he's actually this really sweet guy. But everyone's afraid of him.
It's essentially Frankenstein.
Yeah, that's what I've been thinking about.
Oh my god, I love that.
I love that movie.
I was going to say, that's one of my favorite Mel Brooks movies.
My favorite line is, "What knockers? Why, thank you, doctor." I love that so much.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so good. And putting on the Ritz is fantastic. Also, when he's... It's so good.
Oh, so good. Anyway, so you said that you didn't grow up liking horror movies like Dracula, Frankenstein.
Yeah, not so much. I was a little too scared just because, I'm the youngest, so when my sisters were watching it, I was still too young to really get it.
Sure.
Yeah, that's fair.
But now I'm feel like I'm trying to play catch up because I think it's so cool.
Yeah. And you're able to kind of put it through your own queer lens.
Yeah.
And create what you think is important or what you think people are going to really be drawn to.
Yeah.
Or even if they're not drawn to it.
Yeah.
People are going to...
As long as there's a reaction out of it.
Yeah, just give me a reaction.
So, would you consider yourself caught up in the sense of, like, queer horror, like, lover now? If that makes sense?
It does make sense, but no.
Okay.
I haven't seen a lot of the classics. I don't think I've actually seen Frankenstein.
I don't think I have either.
Like with Boris with Boris Karloff?
Yes.
I haven't seen it either.
Really?
Yeah, so
I read the book, which is, I feel like, would be more rare than watching the movie.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, in the book, okay, so the adaptation, we're talking about, like, adaptations and shit like that. Yeah. The creature is, like, green with things coming out of his neck.
Yeah.
But I prefer the book version where it's almost like he's, like, sewn together like a meat suit.
It's Lady Gaga.
That's why I started laughing. I'm picturing Lady Gaga's dress as a monster. Oh my god, Little Monsters. Oh my god, Lady Gaga.
Well, actually,
queer canon.
I was gonna say, yeah, because like Lady Gaga also used like monster as like a form of allegory of like being rejected
and like otherness.
Yeah. She was way ahead of her time. Well.
I was like, oh, what?
She was born in 18. What was it?
She was born this way.
Yeah.
Well, that whole era for Lady Gaga, that's kind of like a pocket of horror itself.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is great.
I don't think, like, mainstream was ever ready for her to do what she did. So, but now we look at it and we're like, so what? You wore a meat dress. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Like, that's nothing
It was probably uncomfortable.
Right. It probably smelled like beef.
But anyway, yeah, because wasn't the monster actually... He wasn't, like, hideous or...
Well, I always thought
I just
of
remember
him
that
as,
like, he just looked weird.
like, I picture him not green, but, like, I think they describe him in the book as being, like, pale or, like, I mean, he's skin. He's pieces of dead humans. So he's, like, slightly rotted, like, gutted. Like, no, so he's kind of like a beast. If you saw him, he'd be like one of the Real Housewives after a rodeo drive, like, liposuction and facelift.
Right.
So
back then, they were not ready for that.
Yeah, back then, now we're like, bring it on, monsters. But,
Right.
like, so, you know, you can see the humanity in him, which
Sure.
I think is, like, kind of what monsters and creepy crawliness is all about, is seeing the humanity in it. And like you said, Carmilla...
Or what is considered human.
Right.
Right.
And
Yeah.
Carmilla, like, you said that she was a good person in the play that you directed. So clearly that monster had humanity.
Just not
Yeah,
through
I
the
think-
character's perspective, right?
Through the protagonist's perspective, it was a little complicated because Carmilla was, like, pretty manipulative.
Sure.
But she wasn't the villain.
Okay.
For
Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
What happens?
Yeah,
So-
go ahead. Tell us what happened. Because
I
I'm
was
like,
I want to see, like, the play, but I also am just like, girl, spill it. Like,
So towards the beginning, Carmilla has to come up with this whole ruse to be able to enter the protagonist. Her name is Laura. To enter Laura's life, she stages this whole car accident and is like, "Is there any way like we could take refuge here for the night?" And one day I just had this light bulb. I was like, "Oh my God, vampires can't enter without being invited." That's why.
That's right.
And I was like, the car crash makes so much more sense now.
I forgot
So-
about that.
Yeah, that was another interesting thing
Yeah.
about directing this play, was just like identifying all these pieces of vampire lore. So yeah, that happens. Laura invites them in, and Carmilla starts to become kind of this like plaything for Laura,
okay.
because Laura is so
Do tell.
secluded.
Josh loves being a player.
I was like, oh.
And at first, Laura is kind of taken aback by this mysterious woman. Like, what are you doing here? Like, why are you so fascinated with me? Why do you watch me sleep?
Why are you wearing Birkenstocks?
Where did that
It's June.
where did that U-Haul come from?
Where did that U-Haul come from? We have 3 dogs now.
But they start to become really close, and one of my favorite scenes is kind of out of nowhere. They do a tango.
Aw.
I love that.
Yeah, and to me, it just seemed so otherworldly to what they had established so far. So I picked out this really funky music to go along with it, just to really offset it from the rest of the play. Because I was like, this is their moment. No one else is here.
Yeah.
No one is watching. It's just these two. And then from that moment on, it was kind of a turning point. Like, you see their relationship just blossom, but they're still trying to hide it from everyone. So that was also a challenge, because the detective character is present the entire time. He's on stage the whole time.
So he's always there, kind of looming over them?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Because with the flashbacks, he's always kind of watching. He would be walking around, seeing it from different angles, asking questions. So it kind of became a game, like, how can we hide this little moment they're having? So we would come up with these tricks, like the detective would be writing a note while they're like kissing or something, you know, so
Okay.
he wasn't looking. And just like little things like that, which was really fun.
I love
That's
that.
awesome.
Yeah.
I make my friends do that too. I'm like, don't watch me kiss. And they're like, Kyle, you don't. But
Huh. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Now I
So
kind of want to watch the web series. Is it available on YouTube?
I think it is on
It's-
YouTube.
it's on
yeah.
YouTube,
It's,
okay.
It's sweet. It's really cheesy, but it's sweet.
Okay.
I love it.
And it's like present day in college.
Oh, okay. So it's
So it's a totally
even
different
more so adaptation.
Yes.
Sorry, when was like the actual play written again? 18?
The novella was
the novella.
1872.
Okay.
And then the play that I did was 2014.
Okay. Wow, it took that long to become a play. It's crazy.
Yeah, it was pretty cool because the playwright got in touch with me and everything because
Really?
it hasn't been produced that many times. So he was like, hey, you're doing my play, can you send me pictures when it's over? And I was like, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you
Here's my website.
Do you have pictures?
Yeah, on my website.
All right, cool. We'll include that in the Instagram post so people
Yes.
can like check it out.
So what did he say?
Well, from the pictures, he seemed really pleased. He was like, this looks beautiful.
Aww.
It was very nice.
Where is he located?
Oh gosh, I don't remember. I think the East Coast.
Okay.
But-
So, it would have been nice if he would have actually came to the play. I guess he's not a true fan. I'm just
Fake fan.
saying. Fake fan, fake news.
Or what if he was
Whatever.
like the guy who just like happened to be in the background the entire time?
Oh my god. He's like in the background dressed as a vampire.
Right.
You're like, sir, that's a little bit too much. He's like, no, it's not. He talks like that because he has fake teeth then.
See, I was thinking more, well, that too. I was also thinking of like Toni Collette in The Sixth Sense when she's just like, I
my
was
God.
watching in the back the entire time. You look beautiful.
I thought you were going to say Toni Collette in Hereditary. I'm like, Josh, if
When
you
she's
bring
on
up
the ceiling?
Hereditary, yeah. And she's like,
like-
sawing her nose.
Just peering. Oh my god.
That would be great too.
I love her.
Okay, so one final question before we wrap up here. So I feel like not horror.
Stop calling me a
I feel like
horror.
horror in general is a little bit ahead of its time in terms of confronting fears, confronting the unknown, what people are uncomfortable about, because this novella came out in the 1800s, Frankenstein came out long ass time ago too. So
A long ass time ago. See, queers can't do math or tell time, so
No.
they're
I
just
can't do
like,
both.
you're like, I can't
I don't
do
know what
both.
day it is.
Yeah.
So my question to you guys is, where do you think queer horror will go now? What do you think topics might be tackled in the future? Or at least in the next couple years?
I was just thinking about this on my way here. I think Midsummer is a really good example of queer horror now.
Yes.
Because at the beginning of the movie, I'm gonna try not to spoil it too much. I know you've both seen it.
Yeah.
But at the beginning of the movie, the outsiders go into this culture and they think like, what is happening? Like, this is wrong, this is bad. But then by the end of the movie, the outsiders have become part of it.
Yes.
So that's kind of like the otherness, like infiltrating. And
Kind of like
Like
taking
enveloping
over and
their
making
lives.
it making
Yes.
it the norm. Yeah, I think it's hard to say where queer horror or just horror in general is going to go, because the whole idea of horror is just like pushing forward and making you uncomfortable. And I think people sometimes like, I'm super like nothing scared. Well, okay. I get scared about everything. I scream about everything.
I was like, I walk up behind him and say hi, and he's like, ah!
I'm a very jumpy person. But I feel like in reality, I mean, we just did a thing about what we're afraid of, and I'm afraid of birds. But anyways, I think that like to be good queer horror or good spooky scariness is always pushing ahead of what people are comfortable with. And when people become more comfortable with like gore, I feel like is totally on the outs.
Yeah, body horror is
Body horror,
out.
like,
Yeah.
not into it. I mean, like, I like the old kind of, like, campy ones, like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Good
Sure.
Time. Not
Time.
not Good Time. I was saying, like, it's a good time.
I was like, how is that horror?
But I feel like it's always pushing ahead. So, kind of like with what you said about Midsummer, that's something we haven't seen. That, I mean, even though there's horror elements, there's a little bit of gore, there's some jump scares, it's different than we've ever seen before. And I think that's where the genre is really going to be going.
I actually, when I watched the film, like, and I'm not trying to spoil anything, but I actually really enjoyed watching their culture lay out in front of us.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
even that really scary cliff scene. I won't say more.
The cliff scene, no spoilers, was my favorite scene. I thought it was so pretty in like a weird,
Really well
horrific
done.
way.
Yeah.
Right, I was just like, I still kept an open mind. I was just like, this was so deranged, but at the same time, like, this is what they do. That's so
yeah, and like
great.
they choose to do it.
They choose, yeah.
Yeah,
It's not coercion or anything.
Right.
It's- yeah.
right. So I feel like just the fact alone that these outsiders, like, who actually we could almost identify with more because they're American students
Right.
and things like that. I was just like, oh God, shut up! Like,
Yeah.
Oh, they were so awful.
Yeah.
I mean, things happen. But I love kind of the Swedish
Yeah.
cultiness of it. I was like, ooh, mood. I like this.
the
What-
future of queer horror is Sweden.
Watch out, IKEA.
what I really like about horror is not like the jump scares or gore or anything like that. It's taking something that feels familiar and making it a little bit different and like pushing yourself that way. Like kind of like magical realism. It's like taking a world you know and changing one thing. And that's scary to me.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and like science fiction, magical realism, horror, any like queer people love that shit because anything can happen. And I feel like because we are limitless people, we enjoy things without limits.
Well, also, well, that's good. I won't steal that from you. I'll just stop right there. Let's just all have a moment of silence for Kyle.
That was my last brain cell. Like I'm off the demon.
Right.
And then I was like, I got nothing
And then
else.
it jumps off the cliff.
I literally jumps off the cliff. # Midsummer, my last brain cell.
Josh comes up with the hammer.
Right. Shut up.
Josh is always trying to beat me over the head.
Well, thank you for coming on
thank you
today.
so much. I had so much fun.
Ghost.
There's a ghost. I feel like everything in my apartment's kind of haunted.
I love that.
Did we not cover anything that you wanted to talk about with the play or everything you adapted?
Is there
No,
anything that you want to talk
great.
about?
No.
We'll cut this part out. Yeah, okay. I always feel like I have to tell the microphone, Josh, cut this part out.
Yeah.
I had just a little tidbit of queer people should create horror because we live it and we know what it's like.
Oh, okay.
Can
I like
you add that
yeah.
actually?
Yeah.
Okay.
You say any like final thoughts?
Yeah, okay.
And
So any final? I'll say it just like that.
I think you should.
Okay. Okay, so to wrap up here, any final thoughts that you may have, Hannah?
Well, I've been thinking about why queer people should create horror, and I really think it's because we live it every day. We know what it's like, and it gives us that empathy to see it from other points of view, and we know what really like pushes those buttons because we know it. That's
And we
our
have to live
lives.
it every day. Oh God,
That is so good.
Sorry, that stomped all over everything
No,
you just said.
literally, I got nothing. You, like mic drop. Please don't drop the mic. But mic drop.
But
That
really,
was so good.
I think the most powerful tool in horror is empathy. Because that's how you know how to like really get in there and scare people.
Well, thank you for coming on as a guest. We really
Yes,
appreciate
thank you.
it.
I love being here.
Yes, I feel like you have educated both Kyle and I in a lot of different ways.
Oh my god, I want to watch The Thing. The Carmilla.
Thing?
Not The Thing. God, there's so
Fuck
many.
your play. I don't want the thing.
There's so many
Real
queer
horror.
things. What did you call me?
Sorry, what were you saying?
There's just a lot I gotta watch, I
I
guess.
know. Actually, is there any other queer horror movies that we... Actually, if no one has heard about this, check out the trailer for The Lighthouse, which is actually
God,
premiering either
yeah.
this week or next week, because apparently that's also a great queer horror film.
that-
So excited.
Is that like a spoiler alert though?
I don't think so.
Oh,
If you
okay.
watched
I
the
don't know.
trailer, did you?
I did. I saw a lighthouse and I thought, gay.
It's phallic shaped.
A phallic ship.
Absolutely.
Robert Pattinson, queer
Exactly.
canon.
Sailing is gay.
Sailing is gay. Yeah.
Have you seen the outfits?
Right? But the fact that I was so
Tom of
excited,
Finland?
but the fact that I was so excited for that just shows that it's still marketable. It still has a future
Yeah.
for it. So I can't wait for it.
No,
Yeah.
it's gonna be
Oh.
great.
Yes.
So
So
excited.
watch that. Gather your thoughts. Somehow find a way you can
Gather
get...
your thoughts,
Well, I was gonna
also
say-
known as your friends.
That too. Yeah. I was gonna say gather your thoughts and then also watch some adaptation of Carmilla if you can somehow.
Yeah, the web series is very accessible if
Okay.
you're in the mood for something just like light and fun.
Yes.
Light, fun, blood sucking. Why not?
Whatever.
Gay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
gay.
Gay.
So
Gay.
Hannah, where can we find you?
Yes.
So my website, what is the URL? I haven't been there for a while. It's hannahsiglin.weebly.com.
Okay.
And we'll like link
Thank
that
you,
in all of
Weebly.
our stuff. Yes.
Yes. Fun fact, actually, we were trying to get a website for this podcast. We didn't know what we were doing.
No,
So-
to be fair, we never know what we're doing.
Yeah.
So we
So-
just kind of roll with it.
So if you
That's
ever
fair.
looked at our website, it would just say permanently under construction.
I'm gonna get that tattooed on my lower back. Like, permanently under construction.
Okay, so hannahsiglin.weebly.com.
Weebly.com.
Okay.
Yeah,
and if you
weebles
just-
wobble, but they don't fall down.
Thank you. Yes, we'll include that in the bio, and then also you can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and
SoundCloud.
Our baby. Why did I forget you?
SoundCloud is the BB.
Yeah. Please leave comments, subscribe, give us your thoughts and opinions about our queer horror episode tonight.
I feel like everyone's got an opinion about horror.
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 And
yeah.
horrors.
Horror.
Yeah.
Horror.
That's going to be the whole next episode, is just how to pronounce horror correctly.
Horror. Because I'm so used to just being like, whore.
Yeah.
Oh my god, I'm so scared of the whore.
Oh. Well,
I say when I look in the mirror.
I was like Natalie Portman in Black.
Oh my god, yeah. Ah!
Oh, so funny. Anyway, I'm Josh.
And I'm Kyle.
And I'm Hannah.
And we're
Fear the Queer. Bye!
Horror.
Horror.
Whore.